I would say, near unanimous consensus among members of Congress who know and work with Matt Gaetz is that he's just an absolutely horrible person, that he's a living, breathing troll with no real principles who only cares about himself. And I'm just saying that I don't know the guy. I'm just saying members of his own party despise him. Senate Republicans responsible for confirming him are going public with their concerns.
I will say that was a pick that was, I think, very surprising to the entirety of the Senate. And so we'll assess the nominee on the merits, but there's a process that will unfold that examines a particular nominee's background, their experience, and their suitability for a role.
Do you have any concerns about someone who's been accused of sex trafficking, possibly leading the Department of Justice?
Do I have concerns about that? Well, just to name one, I mean, Matt Gaetz comes to mind. I have concerns about him, about the way he disrupted and really destroyed the House of Representatives for several months. What he did to a really good speaker and Kevin McCarthy, and accomplished nothing except getting rid of him, and ruined the reputation of the House of Representatives.
What was your immediate reaction when you heard it was Matt Gaetz?
Oofta. That was literally my immediate reaction.
Now, I think Gaetz is probably the most dangerous and alarming of Donald Trump's picks so far because of the particular powers of the Department of Justice. But most of these nominees, or a lot of them, some of them are whatever, fine. They're what you would expect and whatever. He won the election. He gets to nominate people. But you've got Gaetz, Fox Weekend host Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense, Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence, and now RFK Jr. for Health and Human Services. These are not really credible candidates for these jobs. And it seems to me that they have been chosen with the goal of trying to break our institutions and constitutional order. I mean, again, this is not like a partisan or ideological point. Republicans get elected. They nominate people. Those are people who don't have my politics. Some of them don't get confirmed because they're bad. Some of them get confirmed because they can get the votes. But under normal circumstances, I don't think it's crazy to say none of these people would be confirmable by the Senate, as the Constitution requires for the president's most important nominees, his cabinet. But whether intentional or not, I don't know if it's intentional. The effect here is that Donald Trump is testing his Republican caucus early on, demanding a vote to confirm these wildly unqualified nominees, particularly Gaetz, who they all hate, right? In an attempt to dominate the legislative branch at a moment when he feels like he has maximum power. He can do whatever he wants. He basically wants them to crawl through the Capitol in their underwear and eat dog food out of a can in front of everyone like some fraternity hazing ritual. This is a humiliation exercise. And it's meant to either secure their loyalty or just break the system so he can rule unfettered. Sherrilyn Ifill holds the Vernon Jordan Chair in Civil Rights at Howard University, where she is the founding director of the 14th Amendment Center for Law and Democracy. She previously served as the president and director counsel of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and she joins me now. It's good to have you here.
Good to be here.
So one of the challenges always is focus, because our focus, our attention is our most valuable resource. Trump tears it from us. So you've got a million things to process. I put Gaetz in a focus category that it's all its own because of the Department of Justice. Do you feel the same way?
Well, I'm a lawyer, and the Department of Justice is one of the most important agencies in the federal government. I feel compelled to point out that the Department of Justice was created in 1870 for the federal government to have a legal arm to protect black citizens. And so this is a perversion of the department itself. But the department is also an agency with 115,000 employees. And usually the person who sits at the head of the Department of Justice is someone eminently qualified as a lawyer, in skill, in experience, and in character. Matt Gaetz is none of those things. This is someone who's not even practiced law for 20 years. This is someone who was suspended at one point from being able to practice law. This is someone who has a terrible reputation among his colleagues, who is not distinguished in any way, let alone before the bar. And this is a trolling exercise. But I think Trump's doing some other things here, too. I think you're right about dominating his colleagues. But, you know, Trump never does anything that he has to do. In his first term, Trump nominated some people to his cabinet who at least were competent. You might not have liked them, and you might not have even agreed with the way they executed the job, whether it was his chief of staff or his secretary of state and so on and so forth. He felt at that time that he had to at least meet some modicum of normality. And so there were people like Mnuchin and others who calmed people down. But now Trump knows that he doesn't have to do that. He knows that, one, because he got reelected again, which means all the shenanigans that he engaged in, including his felony convictions, including the attack on the Capitol, did not faze the public from being able to support him. In fact, it appears he may have won the popular vote this time around. But the Supreme Court also told him that whatever you do as president, essentially, that can credibly be called an official act is not something you can be held accountable for. So Trump is only going to do those things he has to do. He no longer has to pick cabinet members who pass the smell test. He can have fun with this. And he can evaluate his Republican colleagues by seeing what they will take, what they will tolerate from him. And we saw some of them. We saw Lindsey Graham last night saying, give Matt Gaetz a chance.
Yeah, well, I mean, this to me is this is a real test. And it's a test. It's a test with greater stakes.
Yes.
With very high stakes. Because I don't think that you can even argue RFK, I think, is a terrible pick who could do genuine damage. You can even argue that, like, well, he told us he was going to let RFK go wild on health, right? Matt Gaetz at DOJ is like, no one wants it.
Yeah, I'm going to add the Secretary of Defense nominee, Peter Hegseth, the Fox News commentator as well, because this is someone who, weekend host, important distinction. This is someone who, you know, is known to be a white supremacist, known to be an extremist, whose platform, whose book is basically about his opposition to the advancement of black officers to the top brass. And the military is actually a very important area for black advancement. And so him selecting that particular person, and by the way, the Department of Defense has 3 million employees. There's no evidence that this man has ever run anything. The fact that he is a veteran is simply insufficient. And so those two, because these are two very, very important positions, strike me as eminently dangerous. And you're right, it takes our attention, but it also demands our attention because it shows us that Trump has gone off the rails and he was never really on the rails. But there is an even heightened sense of impunity about him now that should alarm us.
I will just say that Hegseth would say that he would deny strenuously he's a white supremacist. He has, I just want to
so did Trump.
Put that in the record. He has tattoos that garnered the attention of essentially National Guard commanders when he was going to be sent on the mission to guard the 2020 inauguration with Joe Biden, and was pulled from that, he says, because he was identified as an extremist, in part because of those tattoos. He thinks it's crazy. I just want to give the full side of the story.
But if you've read what he's written about people in the military, about gay people in the military, about women in the military, about black people in the military, especially in supervisory positions, he is an extremist. That is absolutely true. And
it's the world's, I mean, again, take ideology aside and all this stuff. It is the most complex, powerful, and lethal bureaucracy in the history of human civilization on the planet. Is an accurate description of the entity that he is being nominated to run.
Exactly. And so that's really where we need to be. It's not that you're nominally qualified and you have some unpopular views. This is someone who's never run anything. This is someone who I feel comfortable saying that, at least for me, white supremacy and your opposition to diversity in the military is a deal breaker. As someone to lead the military. I understand for Donald Trump that it's not, but one of the things we have to do, Chris, is stand on what we know to be true and what we believe. Because a lot of what Trump does is he confuses us. He overwhelms us. I mean, this week alone has been overwhelming for all of us.
Intentionally so.
Intentionally so. And what we can do, Chris, is we can end up losing sight of what we know to be true, of what we believe, of what your parents taught you and mine taught me, and what we're teaching our children. And that's one of the challenges for us in this moment, is to hold on to that. We get to call a spade a spade. We get to call a thing a thing. Matt Gaetz is incompetent. to be Attorney General. Peter Hegseth is incompetent to be Secretary of Defense. I am confused about Tulsi Gabbard. I don't know what she's up to, but DNI, that sounds scary. And we have to say these things, even if we can't stop them. And we may be able to
I think
stop
we
them.
can. That's one thing I want to say here with Gaetz. I don't know if Gaetz is going to be the head of the DOJ. I think it is undetermined. And I think he's made a lot of enemies. And you've got the Wall Street Journal railing against him today. And you've got tons of people coming out of the woodwork to be like, no. And that, again, to the extent that the normal functioning of politics, persuasion, public backlash, and these things work, that is a good thing. Early signals and early support for that, to me, is central here.
Yes, and that's why if we throw up our hands and say, I'm so exhausted, and I understand people turning off the TV and everything,
I get it.
But I'm asking...
I wouldn't want to watch me either.
Listen, I totally get it. It's exhausting, and people should take care of themselves. I think that's very important. Yeah. But I also think that we shouldn't think it means nothing when we express outrage about the way in which Trump is behaving, when we call our senators and say, I don't care what they say. You better hold on to your constitutional power to confirm these cabinet members and fight like hell. It's important for us to say that.
If you are someone watching this right now and you feel defeated too, you should call your senator or your member of Congress.
202-224-3191, I think. 3141?
Call them up and tell them how you feel about Matt Gaetz being Department of Justice or Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense.
Yes.
You should tell them how you feel. This is actually...
That's one phone call.
Yeah.
But they need to hear from you. And you can spare that, as difficult as this is. So I'm asking everybody to at least hang in so that the boundaries can be set.
We're equal opportunity. If you really think Matt Gaetz should be the AG, you should also call...
No, you should get some rest.
You should also call your member of Congress. Just express yourself.